you know what, this doesn't need to be talked about. Anyway, so this week we are still on week 3 for Assassin's Creed's countdown. So we're still on week 3. I did talk about Assassin's Creed 3 on the previous video, so this is in a sense part 2 of that weekly countdown. So let's get back to it then. By the way, I have no idea what this is about, so meh. Right, so we left off on what? We left off with Assassin's Creed 3. We spoke about the new protagonist, which was Haytham, who turned out to be a Templar, and Connor, who is Haytham's son, who basically hunts down the people that Haytham recruited during his time as the person we played as, whatever. And then we spoke about how Desmond, unfortunately, passes away and dies. So, after this, AC4 kind of kicks in. Now, so, Assassin's Creed 4, as I said in the last video, released in 2013. So basically, a whole year goes by, AC4 comes out. So this is during the time period where Ubisoft is now making Assassin's Creed games per year. So as 1 year finishes, a new Assassin's Creed game is basically already done. So my guess is after 1 and 2 got released, they thought, well, we need to continue the franchise, so why not do what Call of Duty does and just churn them out. Although with Ezio, they kind of wanted to stick with him for a little bit longer because they probably thought at the time, we need to think of new content. So they had like 2 years worth of thinking. But anyway, getting back on this. So, what is different now? I mean, in all general sense and purposes, why did Ubisoft decide to go to the Caribbean? Personally, for myself, I have got no bloody clue, except perhaps maybe for once in their life they thought, you know what is better than being an assassin? So, you know, like, I would love to have been in the meeting room at that time, just to like say, you know what guys, we need to make a new idea for a game, for Assassin's Creed obviously, so what do we want? Do we want to go further into the future? Do we go in the past? If we do either of these things, you know, thing. And I'm going to guess there are a few people who shouted out World War I, World War II, the French Revolution, ancient Egypt, ancient Rome, and then eventually some wise ass said, what about the golden age of piracy? Get that man a promotion. But yeah, so this is symbolised around the golden age of piracy. So, if not anybody really knows, I mean personally I didn't really know that much about it, but think of it as like Pirates of the Caribbean except more Assassin's Creed-esque, and you get to have your own pirate ship. So it's like, wow, I get to have one. So anyway, so who's our protagonist now? As I said in the previous video, we are still following the Kenway bloodline. So who are we following? Can't be Connor's kids, can't be Haytham, so who is it? It's Edward James Kenway. Now, Mr. Kenway, or Edward, or Ed, or however we want to call him, he was born in Swansea, in the United Kingdom, in Wales. Now, he was, well, I don't want to really go too deep in this, but why not? So we'll see if we can pull up anything on Mr. Kenway very quick. Go through Abstergo's mainframes, why not? Kenway. Come on, Edward. Let's find out. So this is going to be one of these first few times where I actually decide to go in depth of a character. So, Edward James Kenway. So, he was born on March 10th in the year 1693 in Swansea, Wales, which we've already spoken about. Now, he has, well, he was part of the crew of the Emperor during 1712 to 1713, then crew of the Sea Dog Bight in 1713 to 1714. He helped make the foundation of the Pirate Republic in 1713 till 1718. He didn't do this alone, by the way. He also had a crew, which was his personal ship, which went by the name of the Jackdaw, which was founded during the 1715 till 1723. So this is when he relinquishes the ownership of the said ship. He joined the Assassins at the year 1721. He was part of the West Indies Brotherhood since that time till 1722, so he was only with them for a year. And then he went back to the UK to form the British Brotherhood, or part of the British Brotherhood anyway, in between 1723 up until the year 1735, which is his year date. So, he basically was with the Templars unwillingly, so basically at the start of the game, we helped the Templars out. So you think it's like father, like son, but at least with Edward, he didn't stay with the Templars, although somehow with Abstergo's records, they show that he didn't actually fully leave. So he was still part of the Knights Templar at the year of 1723 until his death at 1735. So yeah. So let's go a little bit deeper on this. So Edward himself has got really no connections with the assassins at all when he's born in Wales, because I don't mean to be rude about this or anything, but the assassins really didn't have much interest per se in the Welsh side of the world. Or I could be wrong, they might have been assassins there, it's just that law-wise there isn't that much evidence to go on, I'm afraid. It just shows the United Kingdom as a whole, not as a fragment or a part of. So, with him, he wasn't born into wealth. He was more or less a peasant in the eyes of the British hierarchy. So, you know, it depends where you're born. If you're born in England, you've got a very high chance of success. If you're born in Wales, unfortunately, not so much. The same thing with Scotland and Ireland. So it's like luck of the draw where you're born at that time. So he was born to farmers. So he basically was born into agriculture, in a sense. So, throughout probably his youth, as far as I can see through looking at his database, he always wanted to get riches and become something instead of a nothing. So he always wanted to aspire to be bigger, which is, you know, isn't that everybody's dream nowadays? Just to try and see if we can get anywhere in life. But his aspirations were bigger than anybody else's. He ended up getting in a lot of fights and arguments for it, so it's Edward, everybody. Anyways, so he eventually did get married to a woman named Caroline Scott. So I don't think she was like Edward. I think she did come from some form of money. It's just, you know, she fell in love with him. I'd love to see how that went. So, she tried to convince Edward at a particular point in time that if he wants to do something, why doesn't he join the King's Navy? Why doesn't he, you know, do this? He says no. He doesn't want to be treated like a piece of shit. But then again, he does think about this and he says, yeah, sure, why not? Be a private. I'll do this. So he does eventually become a privateer for the Royal Navy in the early ages of his life. Once accepted, he found himself stationed in the West Indies. However, a quick end to the War of the Spanish, succession, and the promise of gold and glory and fame eventually... So basically, after this war between Spain, he eventually did, like most other privateers did, turn to piracy. So basically, he along with a few other British privateers, decided to say, you know what, fuck this, we'll become pirates. Because at the end of the day, it's gold, glory, and treasure. Anyway, so... And fame eventually seduced him into the life of piracy. It was during this that Edward first encountered the Assassin and Templar Order and became embroiled in their affairs and their struggles. So, over the next few years, he struggled with the conflicts around everybody else in order to find something called the Observatory. Now, this thing is very complicated now, because this changes the whole story of Assassin's Creed 4, but I've yet to even mention about what happened to Desmond after 3, so we're going to stop about Edward and we're going to go to Desmond now and find out what happened to present day. So, anybody who hasn't played Assassin's Creed 4, there is a modern day story, but there's no running, there's no jumping, there's no wall climbing, there's no assassinations, it's just you going to work at Abstergo Entertainment for the fun. No, that's a lie. We don't trust Abstergo even for their entertainment section. Just because they bring out something similar to the iPad, similar to the laptop, and similar to a TV home console, that I'm going to be sold on playing Assassin's Creed game. Oh shit, they are real. I've been playing Assassin's Creed games. Fuck, they've lied to us. Anyway, no, they haven't lied to us. Or have they? Maybe I've been paid by Abstergo behind. No. Right, so... So we're working for Abstergo. We are basically the employee, as it were. So we are... Yeah, we are the employee. So we joined in Abstergo, and generally, how you think about it is this, well, how does Desmond fit into this? Well, here's the thing. When you play through the modern day side, you basically become a hacker. So this is around the time period that Watch Dogs came out as well, where the hacking thing was a craze. But, so what happens is this. Your first sequence with Edward is during the point in time when he's part of this Jacobite crew, which is basically a pirating crew. After this sequence that takes place, you come out of the Animus. You're not laying down, you're basically sitting in a nice comfy chair with a headset. And then you're introduced to LeMay, I think her name is. She is somebody who works within Abstergo Entertainment, and she is... I think your manager is the best way to put this. So she is your person that you go to if you have any troubles. You've also got the CEO, who is... I can't remember his name because it's too French. Gillian, I think it is, or Julien? I think it's Julien. So he is a part of Abstergo Entertainment. He runs the whole show, and he is a Templar. He is one of the Templars in the modern day. It's just he's too nice about it, I guess. I don't know. And he takes orders from Letitia England and other Abstergo people, probably Alan Lincoln as well. So. So you have to go and relive these memories. But what happened to Desmond is the question. Well, obviously he's dead, so in the sense of the game, you cannot relive, and this was factual at the time, you couldn't relive somebody else's ancestral bloodline. It's just because if you don't have the right DNA, you can't necessarily progress through a certain memory. So this was more explained by William during AC3, saying that when he was taken to Abstergo, which he was kidnapped, during AC3, Desmond broke him out of the same facility that he was stuck in. But they did put him into the Animus, and they did copy some of his information, but it would be very difficult for somebody else to use his memories because they have to be him in order to relive them. So there was kind of like that failsafe. However, Abstergo managed to crack this. So they make a new Animus, which you wear on your head, and you have a connection to their core in Abstergo Entertainment, and basically you're able to relive any memory from any ancestor. So you're like, okay, this is good. So how does this work for entertainment? Well, for entertainment, they want to sell these as games. So, to put it bluntly, let me think. So, Assassin's Creed Liberation is a good one. So basically what they did was, they take people's DNA, they obviously have them go through the Animus, and they record the session. Then what they do is they send it over to marketing to find out if it's suitable to sell to the general public that they control. So anything that's too pro-assassin, they will scrap, but anything that's roughly Templar-ish in their line, they'll go, we can manipulate this far more into what we want. So the way how this goes about is this, that when you are the hacker, who's a new employee by the way, which is you, eventually you come across some databases of actual ancestors that we've once played as. So like Altair, Ezio, Connor, Haytham. These assassins and Templars were, in a sense, you know, in a sense they were marketed. However, Aveline, who is another assassin that you get to play as through Assassin's Creed Liberation, her timeline got fucked over by Abstergo. So what they did was they manipulated most of the memories to show her being more aligned with the Templar cause than the Assassin cause. However, you get another hacker known as Erudio, who I don't think is an assassin, but I think he's just somebody who's there to fuck Abstergo's shit. And he shows you, the person who's reliving Aveline's memories, the true way of how she lived, instead of the Abstergo version. So, when you start hacking your way through, and you're not Erudio by the way, you're your own person, eventually you come across the marketing schemes for Desmond's ancestors. Altair is too evil, apparently. Ezio is too cruel and vindictive. And Connor, well, he's a simpleton, apparently. But hey, it's Abstergo. So, there's also this. But also you come across a recording of where Desmond Miles' body has actually been taken by Abstergo. So they arrive at the Grand Temple. I don't know how many moments after, but it must be a few days after the events of Juno doing whatever she did to him. So they're obviously in a hazmat gear suit because they don't want to get infected with anything, because you never know. So they walk in, they find the corpse, and they document it. So they set up cameras and everything else. And what most of the one of the team does say this upon recording is saying that they got a lot of weird interference from the temple, but they had to put it off as just being first civilization technology mixing with human tech. It's just a thing. But really, it's Juno. She's found her way into their own system. They did an autopsy on Desmond's corpse. They talked about his burnt arms and everything else, but everything seemed to be intact. And they took some of his organs out, took saliva and blood DNA samples, and took the contents of his bag, which thankfully there wasn't an apple of Eden in. They then put Desmond in a body bag and took him to the nearest Abstergo facility, wherever. Now, there is a good side to this of our hacking, is because we get to see two old faces. We get to see Sean and Rebecca. They're working undercover in, well, at least Sean is. Sean is working as a barista at Abstergo Entertainment, while Rebecca works as a courier. Basically, it's a covering thing, so they're able to get the information they need. Although they don't have clearance inside Abstergo, they can use people within Abstergo's thing to get this. Another person that we do come across is John Stanish, but he'll become more important later as we go on with the video. So basically, we hand over anything that we hack over to the assassins, and then they take it back to, well, Assassin Authority, either their council, or their master, or their mentor, whoever it is at the time. So, back to Edward. So eventually, as I said, Edward had a pretty interesting life. He went to work within the Navy, he then became a pirate, and thus we get to the game as it is. Now, this observatory thing, which I did just say, is a very complicated thing to talk about. Because in the past, it makes sense for the Templars to use, but modern day, not so much. So what is the observatory? Well, basically an observatory, the clue's in the name, it's there to observe. But observe what? The heavens? The earth? No, it's actually to observe people. So how does this go around? Well, for one, you need to have a vial of someone's blood, which is an odd thing, but there is a vial, which are these little glass cubes with a small content of blood. So if you have this, and you place it into and I kid you not, a crystal skull, or a skull of some kind, whether it be crystal or gold or bronze, whatever it is, you place it in the forehead of the skull. The skull is attached to some form of machinery, and thus is able to produce a 3D golden image of the person that the blood belongs to. So in this case, I'm guessing, from what I remember seeing in the game, I think it's got to do with Jack Rackham, his blood, because somehow his blood was taken, apparently. So you see it from his perspective, from the first person view, and the idea of this is to be able to know the truth about what's going on. And generally, the first civilization probably done this to monitor humans, which was us, because we were slave labour, unfortunately to say. Now, where is the observatory? The observatory is somewhere within Jamaica, apparently, in one of the forgotten tribes of the native population, the Sun Warriors, or whatever they call themselves. So, it's all about this race to the observatory and this race for a sage. Now, what is a sage? A sage is a person who constantly gets reborn every few hundred years, or whatever. Depending on how long a sage lives, the moment he dies, he's instantly reborn as another human. Basically, the sage is Aita, who is Juno's husband, and he has lived and died so many lifetimes it's impossible to keep track. But in this occasion, he was reborn as Bartholomew Roberts, and he was born in Wales, just like Edward, in Casnwyll Bar. So, anybody who's from Wales, if there is a place called Casnwyll Bar, you're now on the internet. Well, you've been on the internet since fucking AC4 came out. Anyway, so he was born in Casnwyll Bar, which compared to Swansea is nothing more than just a little village in the middle of nowhere. I don't know how well my Welsh accent is, but it's probably not as hilarious. So, basically it becomes a race for the observatory and for the sage. The sage is the only person who can actually open up the observatory. Unless you have a vial of his blood, then apparently that's also a key as well. So when we play as Edward, we join up with the Templars for a short time due to the fact that Duncan Walpole, who is an assassin who turns traitor, becomes a Templar. Basically, we kill Duncan Walpole, we take his uniform and we pretend to be him as Edward, and we get involved with the Temple of Mess. Then we get into the we then get to learn basically the same assassination skills that Connor Kenway has, albeit Assassin's Creed 4 style. Not to mention now we can also do stuff with our guns, which was also a nice new thing, and they made the hot bar for us to switch weapons a lot more easier instead of the weapon wheel that we got in the previous games. So Edward Kenway has the same combat skills as Connor. He can dual wield weapons, he can carry more than one pistol, but he can do something else with these things, which is basically, if he has 4 pistols, he's able to shoot 1, 2, 3, 4 of them. Just 4. He doesn't have any dual barrel ones, doesn't have any duckfoot kind, it's just a single shot pistol. But hey, they're pretty good. So he doesn't just have this, he also has the blow dart. Now this was something which came from Assassin's Creed's Liberations, but in this case he gets to have it after he joins up with the assassins in their HQ. And basically the darts have 2 functions. They have sleep and they have berserk, which is basically poison. He also obviously still has his hidden blades, he can still do 2 double assassinations, and you can use this in combat as well. You can still use your weapons in combat, you can also steal weapons from the enemy if you choose to, and there's a load of other things. Oh yeah, and there's a diving mechanic that's in the game as well, where you can explore shipwrecks and underwater bases, not underwater bases, but basically if you want to go and raid a certain area, you sometimes might have to dive underwater to get there, whatever. What else is there? Oh yes, and there's naval combat. That was also a new thing. So Assassin's Creed 3 did bring this in, which I did forget to mention, but it was very limited. You couldn't go anywhere. Whereas with AC4, you had the entire Caribbean to go and explore. You sailed the ship, which is the Jackdaw, and it was basically a second character in the game. You could neglect it if you wanted to, and could not upgrade it. You could leave it as it was the moment you got it, but then you'd find that you wouldn't get very far. So you spend time, money, and effort to fix the Jackdaw into a ship to be feared by both the British and the Spanish Navy. So how did you go about doing this? Well, there was a thing called a spyglass, which apparently most pirates had. And this was something where Edward would use to his advantage by scoping out the enemy, let's say, a brig. So in this brig, for some unknown reason, he was able to deduce what would be inside. It could be wood, cloth, metal, and also it would perhaps have sugarcane and alcohol. I mean, what would life not be if there wasn't alcohol? Rum. Well, not rum, that wasn't the answer, but basically it's rum. Now, you basically took this, and the 2 items that you could sell a lot of, which was the sugarcane and rum, because sugar was sugar was a nice thing to sell. And you can sell this for a high profit. You can also upgrade the whole of the Jackdaw to hold more stock, so that way you can sell a lot more later on at any port anywhere that you docked at. So once you did this, it was quite good. Now the whole concept of recruiting assassins was abolished, but it was basically to recruit more crew members into your ship. So basically this would happen either by you helping out pirates that were captured and arrested in the States, which were either controlled by the British or by the Spanish, or you basically killed off, let's say, a ship, and you had the fate of the crew in your hands. So you can have, they were recruited to your ship anyway, or you destroy the ship, or the ship that you've taken, you give it to one of your crew members and they captain it and they become part of your fleet, which you can send out in the world to do an RPG-based style form of combat. But after those routes were unlocked, you could send the ships back and forth to certain places to sell trade and goods, should you wish. Now, getting back on topic. So Edward's way of doing things was that once he, let's say, got the skills that he needed for his assassination stuff, he wasn't an assassin by name. He just looked like one. He had the swagger about him. He was like, I don't give a shit. I just want to drink, I just want to drink, have sex, and just do whatever pirates do. But he also had a republic to think about. And this wasn't just done by him, it was done by a few other pirates. Blackbeard by one, who went by the names Edward Thatch, or Teach, as many other people would have called him through history. You had Benjamin Hornigold, and you had some other guys as well, which, Jack Rackham, and then you had Charles Vane as well. Now these guys were pirates in actual history as far as I'm aware, besides Edward, and Basically, all they wanted was to form a republic to kind of stick the middle finger up, well, the two fingers up the British Empire and the Spanish, to show that you can have a republic, you can have a people, a nation of free men. So, where did they have this republic? I believe it is Nassau. Yes, Nassau was supposed to be a republic, but let's just say they botched it up because pirates at the end of the day. So the whole concept just went down the toilet. And Charles Vane, not Charles Vane, sorry, Benjamin Hornigold and his crew decided to aid the Templars. Thatch didn't join the assassins or anything else, he just did his own thing. Charles Vane went insane, Rackham was caught and killed, and whatnot. And basically Edward started to lose people that he became friends with, along with Mary Read, who went by the alias known as Kidd, who was supposed to be the son of Captain Kidd, or the famous other pirate from British fucking thing, whatever. But anyway, so, when Edward eventually does, let's say, take over a particular island that was once owned by, I'm just going to try and find out then his name. So, let's see. Not Julian. Oh, yeah, so he, after, let's say, his first Templar kill was known as Julien Ducasse, a Spaniard Templar. He had an island under his control. We assassinated him, took over his island. Basically, it became our own Monteriggioni. So we were able to have shops, we were able to have a party as well, and we were able to have other things there. And in a sense, it became our home away from home, from Nassau. So, once this was done, eventually this whole concept of unlocking a certain armour, which was Templar armour, which pays homage to another character that we will talk about later on from Assassin's Creed Rogue. But anyway, there were Templar keys which you could find, which were basically other little Templars that were dotted around the Caribbean island, thanks to Edward giving them the map of where the assassin bureaus were. To the Templars, anyway. Now, it's all about this sage stuff and this observatory, which the assassins are very curious about. And Bartholomew Roberts is somebody of importance because he is a sage. And he's very intelligent and he's very crafty. So, Edward's kills start in 1712 and they end in 1719. So this is during, I'm guessing, in the Caribbean. And then in 1721, after he's released, well, he goes to prison at some point. Not of his own free will, it's just how it happens. He then is captured, well, he's released, and then he goes after the remaining Templars in 1721 to 1723, where he ends his career in the Caribbean, I believe. So, the guy who's the Grand Templar is Governor Torres, who is somebody who's in charge of the finding of the observatory. And basically what they want to do is they want to take the observatory's power and use it for their own ends, to basically spy on the world. So basically you could say this was a precursor to what they would eventually achieve in the modern day. But there's a catch to this. So, with our friend Bartholomew Roberts from Casnewyck Bar in Wales, he had this idea of basically creating the Codex for the Pirates Code, which in Pirates of the Caribbean, you'd find that Bartholomew Roberts actually wrote this shit. So you could probably find out that in a real sense he did make some of the stuff up, but he did have some kind of thing. He run the ship in such a way where it was very efficient, but he did eventually die at the hands of of Kenway, in any case. So let's just try and see if I can find out when he killed him, because surely... Yeah, so he killed Bartholomew Roberts in 1722. So because he was a sage, he had previous knowledge of his past lives, and he knew about things. He knew about the warriors that lived on the island that protected the observatory. He knew about his past life, and you can actually find recorded documents of him, not in actual history, but in Assassin's Creed. When you go around, you can find, obviously there are bottles, but you can find letters that he wrote from his past life, and until eventually he dies, where you find on the island where those warriors were. Now, because he had such knowledge, he never trusted Edward Kenway. He doesn't. Because as far as he's concerned, Kenway's as much as a threat to him as anybody else, especially the Templars. But Kenway's allegiance starts to shake and dwindle due to the fact of the friends that he's lost over the course of the game. Now, the modern day is... No, I'm not going to go over modern day just yet. So then eventually what happens is Kenway finally sees what he has done wrong in his life and he wants to make it right. Now, at the time, before all this, he does meet the assassins there. Not there at the observatory. He does meet the assassins that are stationed in the West Indies. And he meets the mentor of the guild, which is Artabai. And he doesn't really like Edward a lot because Edward, in a sense, had a lot of assassins killed without him realising, for money. Basically, you murdered our brothers and sisters in Havana. So how the fuck do you want me to, deal with you? Do you want me to kill you quick or do you want me to kill you slow? Either way. But he was spared due to the fact that he has the sense. Now, what is the sense? It's basically eagle vision. Kenway was very aware of eagle vision from a child, apparently. He said it was like going into a dream that he can instantly activate it on will. But he also was able to find out other things from using his gift by solving puzzles across the islands of the West Indies. Finding little Mayan slates, I think, or stones, and if he brought them back to where the assassins had their HQ, he was able to unlock the armour of... Well, it isn't actually armour that increases your health, it's basically an aesthetic thing. It's from the first civilization, and basically it was an armour set that they would have worn at the time, which is kind of cool, I guess, if you're somebody who's into that sort of thing. So, getting back on topic, so throughout the people that he met across his time, he lost everyone, and it kind of made him go into some form of depression. And eventually he found himself going back into the assassin's arms so many years later, and he wants to right his wrongs. So Artabai takes him in, tells him the tenets of the creed, which at first when he hears about it, he mocks it in and says, well, if nothing is true, why believe anything? And if everything's permitted, then why not get everything that you desire? But this isn't just like the beginning of knowledge, it's furthermore. There's deeper meaning into the words which he understands later on. Which Artabai says this is a very step up from Edward Kenway that I found many years ago. So he repays the debt by getting rid of the invaders and slavers who are taking Artabai's people away. And Tobias says that he thanks you for this and he's going to remove the rest of his people out, but Kenway offers up the land that he took from Dukas that the assassins could use later on. He also meets somebody else in the beginning of the game as well, which is Adewale, who at the time is similar to Edward but changes his allegiances from Edward to the assassin cause, and he has his own adventures during Freedom Cry, which is basically him freeing the slaves that are stuck on the West Indies on the sugarcane plantations and whatnot. Basically liberating the slaves from Templar control and the Portuguese control. I think it's Portuguese anyway. So, getting back on topic, Edward Kenway then eventually tracks down Bartholomew Roberts. Or at least he helps him out anyway at some point because he wants to see the observatory. And when he does see the observatory, Roberts betrays him. He basically nearly kills him in a sense, and then more or less sends him to a Jamaican prison, which is what I said earlier. So he stays in prison for a while. He breaks out, but at the cost of seeing Mary Read die, who he kind of, I think, might have fell in love with. But you know, that added into more of his depression, and eventually when he came back to the assassins many years later, he said that he wants justice for what he's done, and he wants to make it up to Mary. So he does this, and he wants to track down Roberts and the remaining Templars that are left, which is like Torres and his bodyguard. So he goes to the bureaus, obviously, and he helps them out, and in return they help him. Now, he had the skull, after he kills Roberts during a battle on the sea, Roberts makes a final request before he dies that could he get rid of the body, because if they take his body, it would be over. So Edward does this. I don't know what Edward done to the body, but my guess is he was either thrown in the ocean with weights, or he was burnt. It's either or, but my guess he was given a sea burial in some form. So the assassins then work with Edward to get rid of the last remnants of the Governor Torres's Templars in the different areas of the Caribbean. So from the British side, someone came over, he didn't kill him, but more or less wanted to find out where Roberts was, which he upheld the bargain, but he fled back to Britain. Then Torres dies at the observatory. But here's the funny catch: the observatory also had like the other glass vials which were filled with blood. And Bartholomew Roberts said this, that these vials had blood of ancient people in them, and thus, you know, they're priceless. You wouldn't be able to give them a currency even if you tried, a value. But, you know, the Templars took them all. And this is why, personally for me at the time, I was thinking, so if the Templars took them, where are they now? Do they still have them? Are they actually reviewing their memories at the moment in the modern day? Or did they auction them, or did they keep them somewhere separate in case, should the time arise? But this is probably something else for maybe an Assassin's Creed Syndicate video, which I will get to at the very end of, not this week, but on the last week. So, back on topic. Modern day, every single time that we leave the Animus, we go and hack some more devices, and we get to go into much more further places, and eventually what happens is this. We learn that Juno is actually within Abstergo's mainframes. So once we go to a particular point in the game, we see her and she says that she doesn't have enough strength to transfer her consciousness into us. So she chooses to remain part of the Abstergo mainframe. This guy, John Standish, is very pissed, but he has the same similar tone as Roberts. But anyway, at this point, we're already under suspicion by Abstergo, and we're kept in some kind of bunker underneath. And eventually John pulls us out of the Animus at some point, and he threatens to kill us by injecting us with something, and John eventually dies from gunshots, showing us that he is actually Aita, somebody who was reincarnated again into the modern times. Eventually we're revived and we have recovered. Ms. LeMay, I think her name is, becomes then in charge of Abstergo Entertainment due to the fact that Julien was killed by the assassins because he went to Chicago along with Letitia England, apparently. Anyway, so she becomes in charge of Abstergo Entertainment. You then finish off the memories, and then once this is done, we're given like a trailer thing which they were trying to sell off as a movie for the Caribbean, which isn't Pirates of the Caribbean, but whatever. But in any case, so Abstergo had interest for the observatory because they wanted to find out what it was again, because apparently it looks like they must have forgotten what it was about as well. But I'm going to guess they wanted to see what somebody would have saw at that time, which wasn't a lot. But in any case, taking in from Robert's perspective, why did Bartholomew Roberts like Edward so much, although he hated him? He had a very intelligent mind, Edward Kenway. Which is surprising, even though he's an idiot, he's somehow intelligent. So he kind of referred to as saying that she would have had some use for you if I was able to find her. She who lies in wait. So it's like, he knows where Juno is, but he's always at the wrong time. He's never reborn at the right time, it's just random. But for the modern day assassins, eventually they do something which is a nice little present for Assassin's Creed Rogue, is they leave a lot of viruses in their entertainment side of things. Now, I'm going to guess there isn't much else to cover on, I don't think. So, I'm just going to say that this was week 3, we're done with it, we are never going to discuss this ever again, I don't think. At least with 3 and 4 of Assassin's Creed. So, next week, which I've had to think about for a bit. So, going in by 2 games together, I've thought about this and actually had to just go and refresh myself on this as well. So, Unity and Rogue, as far as I'm aware, I think they released either roughly at the same time or one game came out before the other in the same year. I'm not too sure. But both of them are connected in some way or another, even though they are, in a sense, separated by certain timelines until one crucial event that takes place in France. So, what I'm going to do is next week, same thing with this, I am going to be talking about Assassin's Creed Rogue and showing you, well not showing you, but basically telling you how this game links us between Black Flag 3 to Unity. So, Rogue is somewhere in the middle transition period, and the person that we follow is Shay Patrick Cormac. He has no relation to Desmond Miles, no ancestral DNA connected. None. Neither does Unity's protagonist Arno Dorian. But we'll get to that next week. So, I have been Charles1K92. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and hopefully next week we'll see how we go.